इनसे सबने पढ़ लिया तो
Good morning and Assalamu alaikum. I welcome you all to the first session of our legal conference, which is Emerging Trends in the Legal Education. Living in an era of fast-paced technological advancements and globalization has led to the law being developed at the same speed. These advancements have changed what it means to be a lawyer. It is now expected of students to be tech-savvy, specialized, prompt, geographical diverse, and with sharper skills and acumen. This in return requires educators to be equipped with a technological and advanced curriculum and the teaching pedagogy required to face this constant uphill battle to help students succeed in this dynamic environment. These emerging trends in the legal education need to be identified and then carefully incorporated in the syllabi. This session has been attentively designed for this very purpose by inviting the esteemed panelists with their plethora of knowledge to enlighten us on these transpiring trends. Moving on to the introduction of our guest, we have with us Dr. Usman Hamid. Dr. Usman Hamid is working as an associate partner at Jurist Panel. He has completed his PhD in law at University of Glasgow. He also holds an LLM from University of Sheffield. Prior to this, he works as a civil judge cum judicial magistrate and director Punjab Judicial Academy. Next, we have Ms. Aisha Jawad, who is the head and assistant professor of Nadira Hassan Law Department. After doing her LLB honors from Punjab University, she did her MSc in International Relations from Quaid-e-Azam University. She did her LLM in International Law with International Relations from University of Kent in 2010. Her research interests are human rights law, international law, legal research, and mediation. Next, we have with us Ms. Sevam Sadat. Ms. Sevam Sadat is a lecturer for human rights and a clinical instructor at the Human Rights Clinic housed in the Center for Human Rights at University College Lahore, Pakistan. She holds a Master of Law from Cornell University and has worked primarily in the justice and legal education sector with both technical and managerial experience. Ms. Sevam has worked extensively on legal education reforms in Pakistan, focusing on research and practical skills for law students and better teaching methodology for professors. Next, we have with us Mr. Bakhtawar Bilal Sufi. He has over 6 years of experience as a litigator and handles contentious matters related to constitutional, employment, and tax issues in the High Court. His interest in political theory, law and economics, property law, and constitutionalism allows him to bring a diverse range of perspectives to bear on the propositions he handles. He completed his LLB from SOAS University of London, where he served as the managing editor of SOAS Law Journal, and he graduated with an LLM from University of Chicago, where he topped in jurisprudence. Lastly, we have with us Ms. Sumaya Zaidi. Ms. Sumaya Zaidi is a PhD candidate at Osgoode Law School, York University in Toronto. She is studying legal education reforms in Pakistan and has practiced and taught law in Karachi. Her research interests include intersection of law, history, and sociology. Thank you so much to the esteemed panel for joining us and giving us time for today's session. Now I'd like to give the session further to the moderators to start the session. Thank you so much. Ariha, you may start the session.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Laiba Imran and I'm a law student currently studying in Pakistan College of Law. Today, along with Ariha Ijaz, I will be moderating this session. My first question is from Sir Bakhtawar Bilal Sufi. The question is, sir, education sectors around the world radically changed due to globalization, which has impact on our legal education as well. जैसा कि हमने देखा है कि साउथ एशियन कंट्रीज लाइक पाकिस्तान एंड इंडिया उसमें लॉ कॉलेजेस की तादाद दिन ब दिन बहुत बढ़ रही है, जिसकी वजह से उनकी क्रेडिबिलिटी और फिजिबिलिटी को लेके बहुत से सवालात उठाए जा रहे हैं. Having said that, how do you think that legal education should interact with globalization over comprising its standards? So, आप इसके ऊपर क्या कहना चाहेंगे?
First of all, thank you everyone for having me here. I think when it comes to the question of legal education, there are people here on the panel who are way more experienced in legal education than I am. So my comments are perhaps restricted to whatever perspective that I can bring from my perspective as a practitioner and from what I've experienced having interacted with students. So the only thing that I can say in response to this question is, Gabe, my feeling during the last 5 or 6 years in which I've also taught at Kinnaird and now I'm currently teaching at LUMS, is that what is essentially missing here, at least in law schools in Pakistan, and I can't speak for South Asia in general because, as I understand, India has changed quite a bit after the development of national law universities. And my understanding is that law schools here are still pretty much focused in terms of looking at law in isolation. Whereas if you look at the developments that have taken place in the last decade or so, there has been a paradigm shift in terms of developing linkages between law as a subject and other subjects like sociology, like psychology, like economics, political science, and so on and so forth. And part of the problem that I see, at least in Pakistan, is that the mushroom growth of colleges that are just entirely focusing on law. They are then gearing students to look at law in complete isolation from other subjects. And my personal view is that perhaps does not help prepare students to look at things critically and to develop the necessary linkages in understanding the role of law in society in general. So those are my comments in response to this.
Thank you so much, sir. My next question is from Ms. Saving Sadir. The question is, ma'am, legal practice और legal education के दरमियान बहुत सी रुकावटें आ रही हैं, like particularly in South Asia. उनमें बहुत से factors हैं जिसमें हम outdating teaching methods or infrastructures like our practical training include libraries, moot courts, which give the quality legal education to law students. So, आपके ख्याल में ऐसे कौन से solutions हैं जो हमें propose करने चाहिए कि हम जो quality education है वो law students को इसके जरिए दे सकें ताकि वो कुछ सीख सकें. तो इसके ऊपर आप क्या कहना चाहेंगी?
Thank you so much. So I think I'll just start with saying that, it's a problem जो हम काफी देर से face कर रहे हैं. So I think over the last 5-6 years, we've started integrating moot courts and other activities that seem to move us towards more experiential learning. So traditionally, law may, and not just in Pakistan, but I think across the world, it's been taught as a very theoretical or a passive learning way, whereby lecturers come in and talk about things, but we don't actually let students engage with it. So I think what my colleague just said right now, the critical thinking development, that's one of perhaps the largest problems that we face, in my opinion, when we're looking at legal education reform. So I think there's a lot that can be done, and unfortunately, a big part of it is more effort from institutions and from teachers. So it involves a lot of work on our part as educators, because you have to develop your curriculum, you have to update it, you have to look at what engages with the students and what skills they're not developing in the current, with the current work that we have. What are your learning outcomes? A very simple example could be, leaving moot courts aside in class, you can have lots of activities that engage your students. If you tell people something, their retention is minimal in comparison to when they actually experience or engage with a particular problem. So if you're going to explain, the criminal procedure, and you're going to explain how the provisions work when you are interviewing, when you have someone and you have to question them, you might, and again, my colleague can talk about this perhaps, but I think from an educator's point of view, what's important is to not only impart knowledge, but also to impart some form of skills or how to use that knowledge. So I think there's a lot of opportunities. We need to utilize perhaps literature that is out there. And I know a lot of schools are doing it. So I think we're on our way, but it's a time-consuming process, in my opinion. And we need to find ways to engage with students, whether it is on campus and during lectures or classes, or whether it is through extracurricular activities, which may be easier in some places, given the current trend towards moot court competitions, which help to some extent to build critical thinking, research skills, the basics that you need, to be a lawyer in any field or any specialization. But I'm sure my other colleagues can also, shed some light here on what specific changes can be made in order to change our traditional classroom settings and make it more student-driven or student-centric versus teacher-driven.
मैम आपके लिहाज से आगे जब हम प्रैक्टिस में जाते हैं तो मूट कोर्ट्स का उसमें क्या रोल होता है?
I'm sorry, are you on mute?
हेलो,
sorry, well, I think आप म्यूट हो गई थी बीच में.
मैम मेरा आपसे क्वेश्चन ये है कि मूट कोर्ट्स बेसिकली उसका मतलब क्या फायदा होता है हमें आगे प्रैक्टिस में जाके, अगर मतलब हम यूटिलाइज करें और मतलब हम अच्छे से इसकी मतलब ट्रेनिंग लें, हम मूटिंग करें, तो आगे जाके प्रैक्टिस में हमें कितना फायदा इसका मिलता है?
So I think this question is also definitely perhaps better reflected on by my colleagues who may interact with such students when they come into the profession, but maybe jitni iske upar information hai and people that I've interacted with, moot courts ka kya benefit hota hai? Well, one very simple benefit is कि maybe throughout your curriculum you aren't exposed to do active research, which involves looking at a specific case problem from the perspective of a lawyer. So while we teach laws and we teach the theory, we may not always teach you what it actually means to become a practicing lawyer, what it means to engage with a case problem, what it means to look into precedents, what it means to analyze them and to apply it to your given set of facts. So I think the benefit that some of our students have gotten who have gone to moot courts, and I'm sure Aisha can also talk a little bit about this, is that firms are perhaps more readily able to see that there is a better set of skills that these students are able to offer. They have some provisional, understanding of research analysis and also perhaps some speaking skills at this point. At least students in universities, which are private institutions, which don't necessarily do the local program, I don't think they have as much access to engaging with local law as well. So I think for them, it's a very big stepping stone into actually understanding the framework and how it works. But similarly, I think for all of people who are doing the local curriculum as well, and again, Aisha, I think maybe you can add to this, it's really benefit. I think it builds confidence. It also builds a set of skills that everyone else might not have. And, given how many law schools are popping up, I think it helps create distinctions. What have you done other than complete all your courses, or what have you done that shows that you understand these basics when you join a firm for the first 3-4 months. So I think the skills that you get from it are definitely worthwhile if you put in the right effort and if you're able to, really engage with them.
Right. So I would like Ms. Aisha Jawad to further reflect on this, on how we can improve the curriculum and the thinking patterns that are practiced in our classrooms, and how from her experience, she thinks that what is the best strategy that law colleges should adopt in this regard?
Thank you very much. First, I really want to congratulate you for arranging this webinar, and I'm really happy to see my friends virtually. Sevim, Bakhtavar, Dr. Usman, whom I couldn't meet very often, and also Sumaya. I've heard a lot of her, but never had a chance to meet. So virtually meeting, I think it's a good idea. Well, reflecting on your question and what Bakhtavar and Sevim has already said, yes, we need to change our curriculum. But one thing I'm going to emphasize on, that there has to be one body who should regulate the curriculum for law schools. With due respect, I don't think that AGC should be doing it. There has to be a legal committee or some other body which has to be there to regulate the curriculum, and also there has to be a uniform curriculum. There are law students who are, as they just mentioned, Bakhtavar just mentioned, that we study law in isolation. Yes, but in recent years they just started 5 years law and make it compulsory to study political science and economics and IT and other courses, but still, it really need to be scrutinized that how these courses are being implemented on campus, and there has to be a body to check, because a student studying from LUMS or CNED has a different curriculum as compared to a student who is graduating from Punjab University. So that really reflects when people go into the practice. Also, of course, it has to be skill-based education. When I studied law, and I was just thinking, when I was reading your agenda, that when I studied law, like 20 years ago, we did not have much access to resources. We did not, and also I think the technology, as Eamon just mentioned in the start, I think it's pros and cons of these things. And also, I'm not going to put a lot of liability over law schools to look for the curriculum. Yes, it is the need of time, but also we require commitment from the students as well. To what extent our student is actually, is a keen learner, that is also important. One of the questions you just put forward to Ms. Sevam is that, how these moods are going to help us. Yes, every activity is going to help you in building your critical thinking, and in, to make you, to do a critical analysis. But it is you and the student body who has to work hard to acquire these abilities. We can just arrange these activities, but the productivity basically depends on the student body interest. So one thing that curriculum need to be changed, need to be rehauled. That's of course the basic necessity of the time, but the implementation has to be looked after. How it is being implemented in a class, whether a teacher is equipped enough. Not every lawyer can be a teacher, I always say that. And it's a fact, because we do have a lot of judges and lawyers who knows the law, but they don't know how to transfer the knowledge or to transmit it during a class. So there has to be a limitation, there has to be scrutiny on who is teaching and how it is being implemented in a class. And there has to be activities. It's not only when I studied law, I think I was in Punjab University and it was annual program. I don't even remember half of my teachers, because we were not, we used to go in a class and the teacher used to come in a class. We both were least interested, and that's how we started. But now things have changed. You have to compete globally. You have to compete in international market. You have to go out. It's totally a different world you're living in. So I think it's a both. Curriculum needs to be changed. There has to be scrutiny. Also, there has to be a body who regulates this curriculum. HEC is not the correct body to regulate it, because HEC has other things to do. So I'm totally against this concept. Also, student body. It depends a lot on student body, that how they are. Still, it's when I did law 20 years ago and today. Still people have this idea that, the person who doesn't get into any other occupation, who doesn't get into admission into any other discipline, they do law. I think this should change now, because when students come to us and in interview, they just show to us that they're so passionate about law, but after first or second semester, they're just dropping out and they're just thinking that, law is not for them. So I think this thinking should be changed. So we need a lot of changes, and young generation students like you have to, come forward, and I think you should be more recipient and more into this concept that, you need skill-based education, you need OBE, that is objective-based education. Is around the world, the concept is OBE. So I think we need a lot of changes, probably the practice state of mind, this need to be changed, maybe.
Absolutely. That was a very informative take on that. And yeah, I absolutely agree that how students need to be, be willing to be there with the teachers to, to make it to make all the teaching methods more effective. So moving forward, I would like specifically Mr. Usman Hameed, Dr. Usman Hameed, and Ms. Sumaya to reflect on this. That when we talk about legal education and legal practice, we do see that there is a lot of gap that exists between legal education and legal practice, and particularly in South Asia and in universities that exist over here. So there are many factors that contribute to that, and maybe both of you can reflect more on that when we talk about outdated teaching patterns to a lack of practical training and and lack of infrastructures in terms of libraries or MOOC boards, etc. So to provide quality legal education in the first place. So what solutions do you propose to narrow that gap that exists between the legal education and legal practice, and what are your views on that? um, I would like Dr. Usman to start off, and Ms. Sumaya to further reflect on that.
First of all, thank you very much for having me on board. Am I audible?
Yeah, absolutely, you are.
So actually, what I feel is that the entire discussion, of course, it revolves around the improvement of legal education, but there is a sort of conflict which I would like to address, that we are discussing transition of a law grad to a lawyer, and that role has to be played by the bar council everywhere. It happens like that, because if you look at the system of the UK, from which we did I did my PhD, uh, I realized that they have a comprehensive course. Once a law grad is done with their LLB, they would do the bar vocational course and other courses like solicitor's course. Uh, but and the same is the case with Australia. So transition of a law grad from a student to lawyer, it may not be left to the law schools alone. Bar council is definitely out there, and it has to play its part. Maybe they can delegate that function to the law schools, that to prepare them, to prepare the students for the profession. But at the moment, they have not delegated the thing to us. Punjab Bar Council in the past few months have taken this initiative to introduce bar vocational course, but then that initiative just withered away. And I realized that in addition to that, as Ms. Aisha very rightly pointed out, that the um, things which are lacking in our students in terms of their exposure to practical aspects of law, those things, of course, I mean, if you compare them with the law students of Bangladesh or India, uh, that those things would be actually, they are embedded in our culture. That initially when we take up law as our career choice, we do not reflect upon the actual working or actual ground realities of the profession, and neither our parents do. So we look at the successful lawyers, not the sufferings which they have gone through while becoming those successful lawyers. But I mean, I'm sure that if the bar council joins hand with the law schools and delegates that function to the law schools to prepare them for the field, things could be improved, and our lawyers could better equip themselves with the challenges, better equip themselves with the instruments which they need, or the skills which they need to meet the challenges which they are likely to face in profession. Um, at the same time, not all law grads are going to be litigators. This is something which every law school must bear in mind. We have so many judges at the moment. There are like more than 3,000 judges in Punjab alone. So, but we do not have any course where we are preparing our law students to become judges. They are not being trained in judgment writing, which is, they are not being trained in appraisal of evidence. So of course, I mean, there has been an improvement in terms of moot courses and in terms of mock trials. But when it comes to the things which are required at the level of at the grassroots level, at the level of practical learning, you realize that not of course they're not very well equipped, our students, but sorry, can I just carry on? Or hello?
Yes, I can hear you, Dr. Usman. I can hear you.
Yes, and I mean, of course, they should be in the final semester, as Ms. Aisha pointed out, that HEC should not be having the role of, because they are not trained in law, to determine that what kind of courses we are going to offer to our students is something which should be left to lawyers, body of lawyers. So final semester, I would suggest that when students should be prepared for the specific stream of law they want to take up. Like if they want to be academics, they should be trained in research. If they want to become judges, they should be trained in judgment writing and appraisal of evidence and the other things which are required in the course. Since I have experience of being a judge in the past, so I understand and I know that there is no training for the judges on the pattern of the training of civil servants. Of course, the training which is being given to the judges, that doesn't count towards their career progression. So they do not, I'm sorry to say, but this is the fact of life, that they do not take it very seriously. Instead of training them at that spot where it's probably not possible at the moment to impose sort of training on them, which can count towards their career, we can give that training at the level of law schools by developing a special stream of lawyers who are determined to become judges, and then we should have training for academics. Legal research, when it comes to research, I have seen that there is a tendency among the researchers in Pakistan that they blindly just follow and they revere. And this should be the case, that we should respect and revere the judgments of the superior courts, but it doesn't mean we cannot disagree with them. We have to have the ability to point out the weaknesses of a judgment, because judgment is a public property. So I mean, if your superior courts are giving conflicting judgments on the same point of law, so you got to have the I mean, courage to say it aloud, that this is what is the point of giving 30 different judgments on the single point of motive. So I mean, I believe that all these things need to be addressed, and I mean, we should be given the leverage to take the bold steps at the law school levels, and bar council can play this role by giving us this, or delegating this authority to us to train the lawyers. To sum up my discussion, I would say that bar council should give us the authority to train the lawyers for the practical field of law. If they cannot have this, if they do not have enough resources at their disposal, and if they cannot do this by themselves, then somebody had to play this role. The transition of a lawyer to transition of a law grad to a lawyer cannot be left to the circumstances alone. At the moment, we are only looking at individual brilliances. I mean, apart from individual brilliance, we do not have the sort of systematic process where everybody would have equal opportunity to shine as a lawyer. There are, of course, plenty of gaps in the system which needs to be bridged. But at the same time, when it comes to courses, my suggestion would be that in the beginning, if you start right from the first semester, if we start focusing on the mooting and mock trial activities too much, and if we start involving students in all those areas right from the beginning, then sometimes it happens that they do not grasp the knowledge which is being imparted to them, because that we need to have good understanding of the legal concepts in the beginning, basic legal concepts. If you speak to the students out there, not many of them would be able to describe or be able to discuss the plain and basic legal concepts. So, I mean, this is something which needs to be taken very seriously. And those law schools maybe just on the door that they have not enough resources at their disposal, or the teachers are not good enough to impart basic legal training. But after the third semester, this mock trial and these things should be, I mean, of course, they should be imparted. And finally, I would say that the streams, of course, as I suggested, that there has to be streams for the final year students. Those who are focused on research, they should be given the research stream, and those who are focused on judiciary, they should be given the judicial stream. And of course, these it should not be taken for granted that someone who takes admission in law school is going to be a lawyer. There are multiple avenues.
True.
All of them should be taken into mind. So that's, of course, I mean, I would like to make one final comment on the actual ground realities which we are facing in the law schools. That once HEC develops a curriculum, there are universities who have if your law school is part of a university, the HEC curriculum is imposed on us like a gospel truth, like something which is given in scripture, that you have to follow ABC of that curriculum, and you are not entitled to bring about modifications. And but I mean, with the passage of time, things keep evolving as we see that there are specialized fields everywhere in the field of law. So we should have enough leverage at the law school level. Even if we are part of the university, we should have enough leverage to make changes according to the requirements of the time. So that's all. Probably.
Thank you so much for your take, Dr. Usman. I would further like Ms. Sumaya to reflect on that and add further to it.
Thank you so much, Ariha, and everyone who's present here today, especially Aisha for the warmth that she extended to me earlier. I'm so happy to be here. I'm also happy to be stepping in at this stage of the discussion, because there's a lot that has been covered that I can feed off. So the question is about the gap between legal education and legal practice. Now, at the end, the irony of the state that Pakistani legal education is at the moment is that it has been geared towards creating practicing lawyers. If you look at the curriculum as it has existed since 1947 or even earlier, the focus, the goal, it can be argued, the goal of legal education is to produce lawyers that go and practice in court. And though that was something that made sense within the British Raj period, but by post-1947, the changes in our goals never really took place. Like, India was amazing. Like, I would separate India from, like, we've talked broadly, or the moderators have suggested several times about South Asia and the South Asian experience, but I just would like it to be, and I think Bakhtavar also commented about the law universities earlier on in India. So India changed its goal of legal education, right? In the 1960s, it made it about social justice. once you make the goal social justice, then you are creating an entire system which is not just geared towards, oh, मैं बड़ा होके वकील बनूंगा या बनूंगी, right? Like मैं कचहरी में जाऊंगी. Like that kind of like mindset then is transformed, because then you're using your law degree as a tool. And that tool can be in court, it can be in policy making, it can be in so many avenues, as Dr. Hamid also mentioned, that it's not just about being a lawyer. So if the focus in Pakistan, ironically, the focus has been on practice, but somehow practice bhi nahi karna aata vakeel ko. Use basics nahi pata hongi, use argument karne ki training nahi di gayi hogi, advocacy ki nahi hongi, communication skills nahi hongi. Because at the end of the day, the goal was never really about legal practice. The goal in Pakistan has been about getting a law degree. Degree pakad lo, और फिर भर्ती हो जाओ सिस्टम में, you will learn everything on the job, like on what job, who are the people who will be doing this pupillage or the training. ठीक है, senior advocate होना होता है और 10 साल का experience, etc. But at the end of the day, how invested are the seniors in actually training the students before? And there are amazing things that are part of the curriculum. For example, moot court that has been discussed by many of the participants. But at the end of the day, the moot court is not something new in the legal education curriculum. It's been there since the 1920s. Pre-partition, moot court, a separate area. So to train about law in a practice-related approach. But the problem that Pakistan has had has been, again, this mushroom growth of colleges. Now, the mushroom growth of colleges, though I understand that it is a really serious problem, but at the end of the day, it's not a problem of the HEC. It's a problem of the PBC, the Pakistan Bar Council, technically speaking. Like the shared responsibility of HEC and the Bar Council is completely ignored within that. So agar, for example, HEC ने approvals दी हुई है in law colleges को, तो Bar Council के पास बच्चा जो आता है graduate अपनी degree लेकर, and आपका अगर interview process और examination कोई कुछ तो होता, तो then आप पहले से ही उसको discontinue कर देते. For example, कराची में Federal University के साथ, like Federal Urdu Law University, it was not allowed to continue with its law program before these reforms began. So at the end of the day, the gap between legal practice and legal education has to be filled by someone. Unfortunately, that someone has been independent people. Like in 2015, in my personal capacity, I started doing legal research and thinking workshops in Karachi for young graduates of like within 2 years of experience to kind of assimilate that. But Lahore is doing wonderful things. The Khatana Law Chamber is doing really great stuff. They've set up an entire institute with 12 modules to better prepare graduates of law into legal practice. Now, those gaps need to be filled ideally by the Bar Council, because the Bar Council is the one that is responsible and is the body, and we to be responsible for. And at the end of the day, this also signifies that culture that we have in our minds, कि ये NGO culture type है ना, कि ये अच्छे लोग उठ के कोई इदारा बना लेंगे और वो कर देंगे काम, हुकूमत के इदारे नहीं करेंगे, for example. तो ये Bar Council का भी यही हो जाता है, unfortunately, that mentality that why is Khatana Law Chambers the one that is doing these practical trainings? So at the end of the day, these emerging trends, that was the title for this session, I think, and I would want to hear more about the panelists and the participants to talk about actually the 2018 reforms, which are the emerging trends, through which these trends are emerging. Like 2018 के जो reforms आए हैं, which are cited as 2019 SCMR 389, they have had a really big impact on young lawyers, right? On on the youth that wants to become lawyers. So, for example, there'll now be college entrance exams. There will be it'll be a 5-year degree. This mushroom growth of law colleges somehow is going to be countered by a 5-year law degree, because at the end of the day वही बच्चा आएगा जिसको 5 साल अपने खर्च करने हैं, ना कि 2 साल या 3 साल as it has been in the past. So, and this multidisciplinarity, but the curriculum doesn't really reflect a lot of multidisciplinarity if you look at it in greater detail. There's a law graduate assessment test, which is also the responsibility of the HEC. So Bar Council to kuch hi kar hi nahi rahe. Basically, paper stamping of sorts is the thing of the order of the order of the day. Then they have the special equivalency test, which also students have to pass to be able to do it for the foreign graduates. And then they just shut down in 2018. They just shut down a whole bunch of law colleges. 124 law colleges were shut down by a stroke of a pen. And unke bacche kya kahan gaye? They just said, oh, they will be incorporated in the other law colleges. But how? So I'm happy to stop now, because this is my area that I've been studying now for 3 years. So I could go on, but I really should stop, and be happy to take any comments or further exploration. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was extremely coherent. And I absolutely agree with you when you talk about dysfunctional bar councils and the shared responsibility, between HEC and bar councils. So moving forward, and something related to that, I would really like Mr. Muktawar Sufi to reflect on that. That when we talk about legal education being commercialized to a great extent, and being solely done for financially gains, as we do see a lot of colleges, the mushrooming of law colleges in in countries like, for example, Pakistan, and how it is done more primarily for financial gains than for financial gains. So rather than ensuring that students get to learn law in a more holistic manner. So moreover, it also shows that how this expensive legal education has become for a particular class, and it is not really accessible for other financial classes who are not who cannot afford to access this in the first place. So what are your views on that, and how do you think this issue should be dealt with?
Okay, so that's an interesting question. To be honest, perhaps my views might not be held by others on the panel, and maybe the participants might not agree with this. But I personally, per se, don't have an issue with colleges having a commercial motive. We have private and public. The reason why we have a private and public distinction is precisely because you need to have some sort of a profit motive in order for them to be viable and to be able to attract students. The problem is, you have private colleges throughout the world, and even in developed countries, you have this issue of education being too expensive. There are two problems that then flow from this issue. The first is that the void that has to be filled by the public sector universities is just deplorable, and that's not possible because of the way the regulatory scheme is structured. Madam Aisha has touched upon this, and so has, I believe, Sumaya Zaidi, that you have a confusion between who's supposed to be regulating the legal education sector. And we've seen in the past that there's been a conflict between the Pakistan Bar Council on one hand, and then the Higher Education Commission on the other. So until and unless you don't clarify the regulatory scope and determine who is in fact responsible for the proper regulation of these universities, of these law colleges, and these degree awarding institutions, you will continue to run into this issue. Of course, you can make some improvements on the private side also. You can ensure, perhaps if you have a robust regulatory regime that is able to enforce and implement its strictures, you can perhaps ensure that private law colleges are not exploiting students, or they're not fleecing students. But just to have a profit motive, that for me at least is fine. But then the focus should be shifting towards public sector universities. And there again, you have a number of issues, not just with respect to regulatory issues, but with respect to issues regarding lack of funding, lack of upgrading curriculum, and so on and so forth. So unless you kind of rectify this imbalance, right, and this divergence between the kind of education that is being imparted in public sector universities as opposed to private sector universities, you will continue to run into this issue over and over again. So what you need is perhaps a sustainable solution that will only come once you figure out a regulatory solution to this problem.
Thank you so much for your take. I'll now over to Eamon for any questions from people who are watching.
Thank you.
Over to you, Eamon.
We have some questions from the audience as well. The first question is, how can we bridge the gap between textual knowledge and practice in law on an individual basis? I would really like Ma'am Aisha to address this issue, please.
Suddenly I have a cough where it's not COVID. Not every cough is a symptom of COVID. I just, I'm clarifying. Okay, so what is how to bridge a gap between textual knowledge and
practice in law?
Practice in law. Read, and read. That's the only thing. I was just recalling in the morning that, when I was in college, we used to go to the library, we used to search in that catalog shelf. Then we used to go to the shelf to find the book and to grab the book. But you people have a click away. The knowledge is just a click away. So read, and read. That's how you are going to improve. For me, that's the only thing. And also observe. You read the files, you observe your seniors working. Yes, there is a kind of a structure in Pakistan that when you go for internship, normally no one teaches you. That's the thing I hear from students a lot. Let me tell you, I believe that it's not that they're not teaching you and there is nothing to learn. There is always things to learn. Probably you're not being assigned important things, or probably not important cases have been given to you, or probably you're not, just being briefed. Well, structure has changed in law firms. I'm talking about the times when I was working, but there's always room and there's always space to learn. So I think textual knowledge to the practical knowledge. Yes, we need to change our teaching methodologies as well, but students need to read as well, and they need to observe things. You have to have this urge. Normally when we ask students to go to court and get the file, just as an assignment or something, we have seen that students just get one file and they try to copy that. So I'm putting equal responsibility on students as well for learning. When I was working at some firm, I'm not going to name the firm, I was not paid for the whole 1 year, but I worked there. It's not that they were just, asking me to sit in important meetings, but I was just trying to grab the work. Okay, I'll do the research. Please give it to me. I'll do it. And I was working 9 to 5 in that firm, and they did not pay me anything. But it's not that of course, I did not get anything in cash, but still, after almost 14 years or 15 years of my work at that place, still people regard me. The network I've built over there, the friends I have over there, they just help me in my professional life. The attire, everything. So there's a lot to learn. But nowadays, I've seen that students, I might be seen as a very strict teacher that blaming students, but I think it's the equal responsibility. If we are here to teach you, if we are here to guide you, if we are here to make you follow a path or something, but I think students should read, they should observe, they should see that how their seniors are working. If you want to be a lawyer, but as Maya said, that they are not every person, and Dr. Osman said that if you're doing law, it doesn't mean that you have to end up like a lawyer. As a lawyer, you can have many various fields. So I think it's at the both part, that as an instructor, as a senior, as a teacher, they have their own responsibility, and as a student, you have your own responsibility. So textual knowledge to practice, read, observe, and try to learn.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Exactly. The teachers as well as the students, they both need to play their own part. And we have another question which says, we often see students hesitating to ask questions because of their lack of analyzing skills and critical thinking. How can we improve that? So Ms. Sevam and Ms. Sumaya, if you could refer to this question.
Shivam, do you want me to go first?
Sure, that's fine.
Okay. I've been teaching now for over 10 years. And the thing with that, like one main philosophy that I think that every teacher entering a classroom needs to definitely have is that there is no wrong answer and there's no wrong question, right? The second, and that's the first thing that I cement, like I lay the foundations, like I'm teaching remotely, thankfully, it's possible because this way I get to keep my PhD funding as well. So I'm teaching remotely right at the moment, sitting in Pakistan, teaching in Canada. So the thing with, even in that environment, in this kind of an environment where for the first time I'm teaching on Zoom, it's very clear from the get-go that you can send me messages privately through to everybody, send me an email, it does not matter. We need to create a culture of asking questions. And obviously, faculty needs to respond, but at the end of the day, if we create that culture in the classroom, when students graduate, they step out of the classroom, they will ask questions and continue to do so in a variety of formats. Like, मेरे घर में अगर मेरे घर के बाहर की गली में पानी खड़ा हुआ है, तो why is that? So when creating the space to file complaints against the government, you see, if we have that kind of culture of questioning authority or questioning concepts with the authority in a classroom, taking a classroom as a microcosm of society, we can actually help transform the way we experience and engage with each other and with government and with the world, so to speak. Shivam, over to you.
Thank you so much. So I think everything Sumaya said is spot on, and I would agree with her 100%. I just want to reflect on one small thing, which is that every country, every section of our education, they have a different sort of dynamic of how we go about it. And I think, unfortunately, within law schools, we sort of, and it's something Sumaya talked about earlier about, having a greater purpose or working towards social justice in institutions. For some reason, a majority of law school teachers, seem to prefer the harsher method of teaching, which involves demeaning or punishing students for asking questions or getting wrong answers. And I find that very problematic on a personal and professional level. I think I agree with Aisha that students have to be motivated, but I think as educators, we have a much greater responsibility to ensure that we are not causing demotivation and we are not the ones creating them or pushing them into a place that they're not. So I can tell you a very simple example. Your students answer a question, most legal questions, if you would like to argue as a litigator, they can have any answer and anything is right. So even if it's not what you agree with, more students. And just one thing that I wanted to add with respect to the last question, also something Aisha both talked about. If you look at educators, a majority of them are either litigators who are teaching part-time or they are law school faculty. That's it. So the students who are trying to bridge their gaps between textual knowledge and practice, one of the greatest problems is they haven't identified what they want to do because they've only seen two options. They are not told in law school कि आप और भी कुछ कर सकते हो. They don't know. They just go blindly into firm में ही जाना है, litigation ही करनी है या पढ़ाना है. There is no third option. So I think when we make these options more clear as educators, our kids will come with a clear knowledge. I suffer from the same demotivated children that you often do as well, but I think especially in the question raising, I think it's our sort of place to create a safe environment and to really promote people no matter what they're arguing about, because I think that's part of teaching, being able to question and put out what's in your mind.
Thank you so much, ma'am. We are, having less time, so we will be just taking last two questions. One is from a student from Kinnaird, Amna Adnan. She'd like to refer the question. Thank you.
So, Assalamu alaikum. My question is to Ms. Aisha and Sir Bakhtawer. So, when we look at legal scholarships and legal writings, we see that in Pakistan there are not much articles written by Pakistani writers. So so as students, what steps can we take to increase legal writings and articles in Pakistan, and how to focus on that one topic and select that one topic that we can go for?
Well, I think for research, I would like to direct this question to Dr. Usman because he has done a research, and I think his master's in political science, Dr. Saab, if I'm correct. So I think he's the right person to talk about it. That why we do not have local writers, and we can't find textbooks even written by local authors. Dr. Saab, if you would like to say something on this.
Thank you very much for your question. Actually, we do not have that kind of dearth. It's not that disappointing, the scenario out there, because there are now requirements for all the law schools to have their law journals, and the students have the opportunity, if their article is good enough and if they can work with their teachers and supervisors, they can get it published. Apart from that, newspaper avenues are always open. But quality research, when if we talk of quality research, that is of course something which should be of concern, because the kind of things which are being published, they are mainly focused on one or two areas. I would dare to say that most of the um, publications which are thought to be published in high-ranking journals, they are written on Islamic Sharia, family law. So these things are, of course, now. We have probably researched to test these things. We need to go beyond this. If you look at criminal law, there are, kind of things which your judges are not very clear about at the moment. As I told you about the uh, thing about the area of motive. So it's like there are 35 different judgments on the single point of motive, that it is essential to establish a crime and not essential to establish a crime, given by the Apex Court of Pakistan. And there you can access those judgments on the Prosecutor General's page right now. So but for a student, once an idea comes to his or her mind, they should just not drop it away. Just keep reflecting on that idea, and then they should look for the resources which are given on the internet. And then, of course, Pakistan Law site is can be another resource to further dig into. Of course, it has to be an initiative on the part of student. If they think that they are overburdened with the classwork, and they just drop the idea, which ideas are really important, and you shouldn't just. Idea is the gold currency of the 21st century. You should value your ideas. So it's, if you come across a novel idea, just keep digging that idea. And the important thing is, look, resources are available to your generation in abundance. We were not that lucky to have that kind of resource bank, but you have all these things. Google itself has now so many resources, as along with that PLS, and then East Law, so many resources which universities are offering to you free of charge. Back in my days, we had a very lame kind of library, but you people can certainly just stick to the idea and keep digging. And then, of course, a point comes when you get the kind of clarity which you want. So this is the idea of Barrister. This was the idea of Barrister Pensota, that right to food should be part of right to life. And finally, that landmark judgment was given, which is now on Harvard Law School's page, which was given by Justice Jawad Al Hassan. So these are the kind of things which, he worked on his idea. he further digged it out that what Pakistani environmental law says and what at international level, what kind of protection is being given to the right to food. But if you just drop your idea and give the excuse that you were overburdened with classwork, then of course you have you could say that you have done yourself disfavor, and that kind of things. Students frequently do. We have a complete course on developing ideas. That is finally a research project. If they take it, if the students take that course, that single course seriously, that they can come up with the research paper. I have seen my students at Barrier University, Islamabad, that they, two of them were so brilliant that they came up with the a problem in. Of course, everyone knows about that Jazz merger question. The acquisition or the acquiring data on that issue was a very difficult task because the companies do not share that kind of data, but they reached out to the companies, they reached out to the sources in those companies and compiled a kind of research which I'm proud of having supervised. So, of course, you have plenty of opportunities. Just keep digging out, and finally, you will come. This is the nature of the beast. You must admit that in research, the day one when you come across with an idea, it strikes you as fascinating. It doesn't mean that it will turn into. It will turn into the same shape which you have envisaged for yourself. It will change its shape, but if you keep working, you will certainly come up with some kind of substantial contribution to your field. So I would suggest just keep digging, and resources are in abundance for you.
Thank you so
If I could just, sorry, if I could just add on to what Dr. Hamid said, I think the responsibility of this part is also on the faculty to create that environment of research, to recreate the environment of learning. Yes, Aisha, I 100% agree with you that students need to read and they need to take it seriously, but they will only also do that when they have access to faculty that's also researching on their own and
Agreed.
writing. So I think that this onus is on our shoulders, but other onuses can be on the shoulders of the students. We can't hear you. Yeah.
So we just like to take the last question because it's very interesting, and I'll state the question generally to the panelists, and whoever wants to answer can answer the question. So the question is, Bar Councils granted license to the graduates who couldn't even pass LawGat. Recently, the Supreme Court also granted relief to those lawyers by abstaining them from casting vote, but given them the right to practice. Comment on the role of provincial bar in regularization and compliance to the 2018 judgment on legal education. Anyone can answer this question.
Well, I just want to say one thing. Again, I think I'm going to be the most, the person who's criticizing a lot. What test we are talking about? As in, what test we are talking about? Have you seen that test? Have you looked into the environment where the test was conducted or is being conducted? Who is marking that test? Who is the person who has passed the test? I remember when I appeared for that test for the practice. I don't know what type of environment was there in the exam hall, and people who passed the test, and I know somebody who who failed the test, and the next day, the person announced, oh, that was a mistake, I actually got passed. So who has a control over the computer? Who has control over the system? I'm not saying that, things are negative and nothing is getting improved. Yes, things are on the right track. Supreme Court and our judiciary is taking action and is getting stricter, in regularizing things. But then we need to, build the institution for that, for scrutiny. And also, politics is so much indebted in our legal fraternity that there's a lot of things which are just sidelined, and they're being ignored, and they're not being considered when it comes to this. So yes, having a test. There has to be a test. Around the world there are tests where students have to pass. They have to do internships. They have to do pupillage whatsoever. But then there has to be a strict standard and a uniform standard set for such tests. So that's my take on it. And I think Bakhtavar and Dr. Saab or Sevam and Sumaya can add to it. Bakhtavar can probably.
I'll just take a few seconds on this. I think. Sorry. डॉक्टर साहब आप प्लीज कंटिन्यू कीजिए.
मैंने तो भी स्टार्ट नहीं किया था, but if you just give me the floor, so I would say that the only I have to make a short comment that bar councils are politicized bodies. You have to bear it in mind. So I mean, tomorrow when once you become a lawyer, you would value this thing. That you are part of this magnanimous body, but if you put forward the proposal that bar council should just be ruthlessly merit oriented, and they should just strike out the names of all those liars who do not qualify the GATE test, this will never happen, because of course bar when a body is politicized, it is always open to access by people, and if someone says that if they are an elected body, they always have the fear in the back of their mind that if 300 lawyers we just strike out their names because they couldn't qualify the GATE, what will they do to us tomorrow once they're done with the test? So it's this responsibility I don't think bar council would be willing to take.
If I may just quickly add on to this point, issue again, as Dr. Saab said and Madam Aisha pointed out, is with respect to the incentives that a bar council has. Because a bar council is popularly elected by the body of lawyers, it always has an incentive year in, year out to add as many people as possible. So, agar bar council is coming down very strictly on, let's say, new lawyers, और उनको वो फेल कर देती है, और वो लॉयर्स फिर कहें जिस तरह उन्होंने इस साल प्रोटेस्ट किया कि नहीं, आपने हमें गलत नंबर दिए, आप हमें पास करें, तो जो बार काउंसिल है, क्योंकि इलेक्शन साल बाद है, उसके पास इंसेंटिव है कि वो इनको इजाजत दे कि वो अपना जो वेवर जो भी इनको देना है विद रिस्पेक्ट टू देयर मार्क्स वो दे दे, ताकि ये 300 लड़के या 500 लड़के आए बार में, बार का हिस्सा बने और फिर हमारे लिए वोट डालें. So जब तक आप अपने बार काउंसिल की कॉम्पोजिशन चेंज नहीं करेंगे, and there's been a lot of literature on this, people have written a lot on reforming and restructuring the bar councils which are subject to regulatory capture at this point in time, तो ये चीज improve नहीं होगी. या तो आप बार काउंसिल से एग्जाम की एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन लें और लेकर किसी एक इंडिपेंडेंट बॉडी को दें, बट जब तक तो आप ये नहीं करते और बार काउंसिल्स ही एग्जाम को रेगुलेट कर रहे हैं, एडमिनिस्टर कर रहे हैं, तो एग्जैक्टली वही इश्यूज आते रहेंगे जो हमने अभी इन द पास्ट देखे और जिनकी तरफ मैडम आयशा ने भी इशारा किया.
If I could just add on, I think हमारी बार काउंसिल को एक लीगल एथिक्स का एक कोर्स लेना बहुत जरूरी है, because ethics are completely like devoid. Like, I mean, it's such a massive void, an ethical void in legal education and training. And that is the reason why all of this happened. Like, again, I'm going to mention the work of Fatana Law Chambers, because they are the ones who filed the case against the Punjab Bar that was allowing students who had under 50% like marks in the test, they were given licenses to practice. Not even that, people COVID की वजह से उन्होंने ऐसे ही लोगों को जो graduate कर गए उनको भी licenses मिल गए. And then there was this blanket like when Omar Atta Bandial Saab like saw this and he said, what are you guys doing, right? Like back it up. And so I think the bar council's ethics has been completely destroyed if we had them in the first place. And I think the politics of a bar has actually is transforming the way we even perceive law and the way what lawyers do, because the lawyers movement of 2007, actually that is to blame for this, because we politicize the bar to such an extent that now you're just like, I spoke to an interviewee that I like, a fresh graduate, who said, "Aapko pata hai, madam, mere paas 20 वकील हैं मेरे ग्रुप में." So जब बार की सियासत में लोग मुझसे बात करने आते हैं, मैं कहता हूँ मेरे पास 20 वोट हैं, you know. So it's not about the vote. I mean, it's a lot more, and we need to reshift the focus of the Bar Council and make it more ethical, maybe. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm just going to add one small thing on to what Sumaya said. I think apart from ethics as well, maybe creating a little bit of accountability within lawyers is also very important. I think that stems very closely to all these problems. Yes, bar councils are political. Yes, you know, they thrive on the vote. That's why they'll keep bringing people in. But you have to really stop and introspect at some point. Where do these people come from? They are part of our society. I am a lawyer. We're all lawyers here. I mean, a majority of the panel is at least. And we have to take that responsibility as well, and understand that as we become more and more senior in this profession, you can either decide to stay with it because that's how the Bar Council is, or you can decide to take small actions, even if not large ones, to try to change this. And one part of it is accountability. Let's look at what senior lawyers today are doing. Let's look at what junior lawyers are doing, and again understand that it's going to be a trickle-down effect in society, right? So I do think, for me, it goes back to what Sumaya said earlier. If we were to change how we looked at this profession, perhaps from a more social justice point of view, and again, that's my background, so that's why I will always be for it. A lot of these problems could be solved, because that's what you're missing, the element of accountability, of ethics, of actually, being responsible for what we're doing. And, Bar Council, while may not be the best authority right now in Pakistan to be looking after these exams, and we could create a separate body for it, but I don't think that should take away the level of responsibility that they hold as a body, and what sort of stature they should present to us as a community of lawyers and as people. So I just think that you have to also recognize that there are intrinsic changes that need to come into place to help move this forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you to everyone for giving us the time today on Sunday for this conference. And we would definitely like to have you again for our other conferences as well. So thank you, everyone. And we are moving on to our second session, which starts in about 2 to 3 minutes. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Thank you.